I know we have people who are here from all over the country, so please tell us where you're from, put it in the chat, and make sure that you're sending your chat messages to all panelists and attendees. And then everyone will see what you put in there, and we'll see where everyone's from. Hi, everyone. It's 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central, 5 o'clock Pacific, and we are going to get started in just a minute or two. We still have a lot of people that are coming into the presentation, so let's just give them another minute or two, and then we'll get going. In the meantime, if you're just coming in now, please feel free to put in chat where you are tuning in from, and make sure you're sending your chat messages to all panels and attendees. You can set that for yourself in the chat before you put something into it. I see people are in from everywhere from Los Angeles to Boston. That's great. I see Maryland and North Carolina and Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, Pittsburgh, Orange County. I just came from Orange County. I was just visiting my family there on my first post-COVID trip in the last few days. San Diego, Los Angeles, a lot of West Coast representation here. And also New York, Philadelphia, Westchester, Naperville, Illinois, Arizona. Great, we really do have national representation. Princeton, New Jersey, great to see everyone. Okay, I think we should go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Return to Work Employers Showcase event. I'm Carol Fishman Cohen, the CEO and co-founder of iRelaunch, and we're very pleased to be partnering with Mocha Moms to bring you this event. This is our second event that we've partnered with Mocha Moms on, and the first event was held back in February when Kuae Kelch Mattox, who's the national president of Mocha Moms and who is a relauncher herself, and you'll hear from Kuae in a little bit, she moderated a panel with 3 successful relaunchers about their experiences as Black women relaunching and in corporate settings. And we have a recording of that event. So if any of you are just joining us for the first time and didn't get a chance to attend that event, we can put the link to it into chat, and we'll be putting other resources into chat as I'm speaking and as Kuae is moderating our panel, which I'll tell you about in a minute tonight. So watch the chat so you can have access to these links. So we have a recording of the first event that we did in February. It's going to be in the chat. And then at the end of that event, we asked for some feedback from all of the attendees on what people wanted to see for the next event. And there were 3 main requests. One of them was to build a network for relaunching mothers of color. One was to provide resources and practical information on relaunching a career, so strategies, and also to highlight opportunities for relaunching mothers of color. And tonight, we're going to focus on the second 2. We're going to talk about resources and practical information on relaunching a career. And we're also going to highlight 3 return to work programs that welcome mothers of color to apply for and participate in. So I'm going to kick it off tonight and talk about strategies for relaunching, and the Mocha Moms team has asked me to focus specifically on confidence building strategies, and those are going to wrap into some other important strategies for relaunching, so we'll cover a lot. And then I'm going to hand it over to Kuae, and Kuae is going to moderate a panel of program managers from 3 major return to work programs, Meredith Idola from Facebook, Darla Pires DeGrace from Morgan Stanley, and Sandra Fernandes from Wells Fargo. And we're very privileged to hear from all 3 of them about their programs, which are 3 of the premier return to work programs that we know about and work with. So that's going to be really informative, and I'm so thrilled that all of them are available to share their wisdom tonight. And then we're going to save the last 15 or 20 minutes for Q&A from the audience, and we will take those questions through chat. So if you want to put them in the chat box at any time while anyone's talking, we will just keep collecting them. If you want to indicate if your question is directed to one of the panelists or to Kuae or to me, please do that. And otherwise, we'll just figure it out depending on who has the best answer. All right, so let's start with talking about return to work strategy. And I'm going to focus on these confidence building strategies because confidence building overlaps some of the key strategies that are fundamental to a successful relaunch. And when we think about confidence and relaunching, there's really a 3-pronged strategy to building confidence. One part has to do with figuring out exactly what you want to do. The second one is to practice talking about it like crazy. And the third one is to become a subject matter expert all over again in your field, either in the field that you are resuming a career in, or maybe it's a new field. And then there's a 4th one for some people, and that is they can get their confidence boosted by speaking with people from the past. So people from the past with whom you went to school or with whom you worked, because even if you've gone through a period of feeling professionally disconnected while you've been on career break, I know that happened to me. I'm a relauncher myself. I took an 11-year career break away from my finance career. And I remember when I was in the middle of my career break, I was feeling really professionally disconnected. I felt a diminished sense of self as a result of that. And that's a reflection of our society attaching so much importance to what we do in terms of what our identities are as people. So when you find yourself professionally disconnected for an extended period, then you can experience this diminished sense of self. And that's why relaunching is different from a regular job search, because you have to spend time and energy and focus building back up that confidence piece again, and rebuilding your networks and reskilling or upskilling and all these additional pieces in addition to what's typically involved in a job search. So some people, when they get back in touch with these people from the past, those people have what we call a frozen in time view of you. So they remember you as you were. They don't know anything about your diminished sense of self or you're feeling professionally disconnected. They only reconnect with you if you get back in touch with them. And then they're remembering when you were working together or when you were going to school, and they can be so enthusiastic about the idea that you're relaunching that they can be even more confident about it than you are, and that, well, their enthusiasm will help your confidence. So that's a 4th piece, but I'm going to concentrate less on that right now. I want to focus more on these original 3 steps, because 2 of them are actually pretty hard to do and take time. One of them is less hard, but you still have to spend some time on it. So the 2 that are really hard are figuring out exactly what you want to do all over again, and then becoming a subject matter expert in whatever that chosen field is. The third one, practicing talking about it in a succinct and specific way. So it requires that you script it out and that there's a lot of repetition in terms of practicing, and that takes some time, but it's not as hard as the other two steps. And you need to figure out exactly what you want to do and also do some subject matter expertise work in order to even be able to talk about it and take this third step in a concrete way. So let's first talk about this figuring out what you want to do, because you need to do it in a way that filters out a lot of negative talk that can creep into the conversation, even that conversation that you're having with yourself about, if you want to enter the field that you were in a long time ago, but a lot of things have changed, and you might even feel like, I doubt if I could even do that kind of work again. You might think that to yourself, and that would help make you filter out that as a possibility, even if you would admit to yourself that if you could master it again and had the opportunity to get back into it again and knew that you would do a good job, that you would absolutely want to be back in. So sometimes we talk ourselves out of something because we're not feeling confident about it. So the first piece is to filter out all of these negative possibilities and try to just look cleanly at what exactly do I want to do? And do I want to return to what I left? Do I want to return to some permutation of what I left? Like maybe I really loved what I did before. I remember I really loved what I did before. I was working in an investment banking firm in corporate finance. But wow, the travel and the spontaneous travel, and this was, of course, not during COVID, and maybe it's different now, although we are coming out of COVID. But the idea that you find out that evening you're on the first plane out the next morning didn't feel very compatible with my life stage. So could be legitimate reason like that. You don't want to go back to what you were doing, but you have to go through, or maybe you might hear, especially coming out of this recession, there are not enough jobs in the area that you're interested in. So you have some choices there. You could say there are not enough jobs, but there are some, and I'm going to go after the few. Or you could say, I am going to tweak my goal a little bit to see if I can use some of those same skills and do something related to it that might have better prospects in the current job market. But you have to go through this rigorous process of looking at each of your significant paid and volunteer past experiences and break each one into components, and then identify the ones you love and that you're good at. And that's how you build back up a new career path for yourself. And we call this the job building blocks exercise. There's job building blocks worksheets. It's all outlined in a roadmap product that we have on iRelaunch.com, but you can also find it in our original book, Back on the Career Track, that's still available, Kindle and print on Amazon. And there's a lot in that book that's dated, but the whole job building blocks worksheet exercise and something called the 4 C's that I'll talk about it are still the same. So that's another way of accessing it. And sometimes you can find that book in the library. So I'm just trying to give people a range of ways of accessing that information without having to purchase it, or you can purchase our iRelaunch Return to Work Roadmap, which is very, very comprehensive, and this is one piece of it. But you also, besides going through this process of what you were doing in the past, you also might have had an epiphany while you were on career break. That's one of the gifts of career breaks, is that they allow us to step back and reflect on whether we were on the right career path to begin with. And you might discover that there was a pathway that you always wanted to pursue, but you held yourself back because someone didn't approve. Like, your parents made you go to law school and you didn't even really want to go and you wanted to do something completely different. Maybe it's time to give that a shot. And sometimes, we'll hear from relaunchers who feel like they were not on the right career path to begin with, that the relaunch gave them the chance to identify that and reorient themselves, and then relaunch in an entirely new direction in a way that feels very true to themselves. And also think about it, we're much more fully formed when we are after our career break than before. I was 42 when I relaunched. I was barely 30 when I took my career break. So I was a very different person when I was relaunching, and I feel like I knew myself a lot better, and I had lived more life, and of course that makes sense. So that might be the pathway for you, is that you're not going to be afraid anymore to try to go for something that either you were afraid to do earlier, or you didn't want to go against someone whose approval you really were influenced by. The other piece, though, is let's be realistic about finances. So if you have financial pressure, you might need to take a not so perfect job to pay the bills and then try this other path as a side gig for a while before you have enough traction there to switch into it, or if there's something entrepreneurial, to have a realistic business out of it. One cautious note of caution about the entrepreneurial journey is that people tend to romanticize that, and they hear all these success stories. And if you're planning on going the entrepreneurial route, you need to think realistically about a scenario where you may need to go for a long period of time without an income stream, without a solid income. Maybe it's a lumpy income, or maybe it's negative income because you need to borrow in order to invest in the business. So that's the reality for the entrepreneurial route. You need to think about that. Now, the programs that we're going to hear about tonight typically are not for people who are relaunching in a brand new area. They're people who are either going back to careers that they were high performers in the first place, or to something maybe adjacent to their original function, but still in the same area, or using some of those same transferable skills, but in a new context. And part of your success there is your ability to identify those skills or identify some related function and be able to relate it back to what you did before your career break. So you can talk about why it makes sense for you to be in those roles. But, we rarely see someone who is relaunching in a completely brand new area come back to a formal corporate return to work program. So I know there's going to be a lot of discussion later about those programs, but I just want to throw that out to make it clear. So the other thing about this first step is you need to get very specific in what your career goals are. So it's not, I'm going into finance. It's, I had a career in media and I wanted to transition into finance. So I got an anti-money laundering certificate. And now I'm focused on getting a job in the regulatory compliance area of a big financial institution. So it could be something like that. You see the difference, that much more specificity. That was actually a real relauncher story of someone who did make that transition, pretty unusual. But it also could be someone who took a long career break, I was in financial analysis. I did a lot of self-study and reviewing financial transactions and looking at my own finance books and talking to my old colleagues and really grilling them on what are all the new acronyms and what are all the new products and services and how do they work and why don't we have the old ones anymore. So those are the kinds of discussions you'll have to have in terms of the subject matter expertise part of it, and I'll get back into that in just a minute. But on top of this whole jobs building blocks worksheet approach, you also will need to overlay on that something we call the 4 C's, which are control, content, compensation, and culture. So you have to determine, it's different for every person, what does control mean for you? It really has to do with control over your schedule. What does that mean? Like there are some people who want to be able to train for a marathon and have time to do that around the edges of their workday. Some people want to have a lighter workload during the summer, so maybe they go into academia where that's typically the case. Some people want to be able to pick up kids from school in the afternoon and then resume working later. Now, I have to say that a silver lining of COVID really forced companies and individuals to think completely new in a completely new way about how, where, and when work gets done. And as a result, we're seeing more flexibility in terms of what is the definition of face time in the office? And maybe that's going to become less important going forward. You're hearing a lot of controversy about that in terms of companies feeling like it's important for people to be back or not be back, or be back only a couple of days a week. So that's a very active conversation now. And that's a very different conversation than what was happening before COVID. And FaceTime in the office requirements held many of us back from the idea of relaunching into a full-time role when we recognized we could work in a full-time equivalent, but it might have to be at unusual hours, or not always in the office. And now maybe that's actually achievable. So control maybe is a little bit of a different conversation now than it was pre-COVID. Content, of course, what you're doing on the job, the actual work itself, compensation. Some people say they're willing to take less money than they think is fair or they're worth in order to get the schedule that they want. And we say, if that's your trade-off, you shouldn't have to trade more than one of these C's to get back on the career track. And if you traded compensation, at least initially, that's a piece that you can make up over time. And that's what we hear from relaunchers who have been back at work, who might have come back in at a much lower level than what they left. I actually wrote an article for Harvard Business Review on this about, I think it's called, Should I Take a Lower Level Job When I Return to Work? And we went in and interviewed relaunchers who did exactly that years later. And Kuae was one of them. And you'll see she's quoted in the article. But to a person, when we interviewed those relaunchers who came in at a much more junior role than what they left, and had over the time made up a lot of that ground, said, just get in the door. Don't focus so much on level. Just focus on getting in the door, and that the raises and promotions will come along after that. So that's a little bit of discussion about compensation. And then the culture, of course, is the mission of the organization, the people with whom you work, the work environment, the teams, everything about how the work gets done and who you work with. So those are the 4 C's, and you can overlay those on top of the job building blocks worksheet process, and that's going to help you get even more defined in terms of what exactly you want to do, and being very specific about it. When you go through that process, and it takes time to go through that process, but when you go through that process, it's going to build your confidence, because you're going to feel a stronger and stronger conviction about why this is the right match for you. And it will become clearer to you the steps you need to take in order to get to the place where you feel like you're really ready to apply and be a competitive candidate. That also is a confidence building process in itself. Now, hand in hand with this, though, is subject matter expertise. So there's no substitute for diving in deep all over again and really understanding what's going on in your field. And your ability to have conversations with people who are in your field, to have successful interviews, is going to hinge on your willingness to dive in and think about all of the issues that bring you up to speed in a particular field. And, reading books and articles, following experts, understanding the new products and services, and really their features and how they work and what they're called and what the acronyms are. All of those details are part of becoming a subject matter expert all over again. And when you master that, you feel a lot more confident. And if you know the controversies in your field, and you know what are the controversies and who's on what side and why, and are you on one side, and do you have an opinion on that? what are these the new products? Why don't we use the old products anymore? All the language, all of this, knowing that is going to help you become more confident while you're becoming a subject matter expert. Excuse me. All right, one more thing here. All right, so the other piece of that is that when you get into interviews, you're going to have a lot more to say. People are going to focus on the substance of what you're talking about. And also, if you take courses, if you do any volunteer work in the field, if you take courses that might have a field study component to them, then you also will have something additional to talk about in terms of taking what you learned in the classroom, applying it to a real problem. Again, a great illustration of subject matter expertise. So that's a really real, that whole process is also takes time. It's also going to be a process where you start to gain more confidence. The other thing, sorry, the other thing that you can do is you can start to do some of your own writing about this if you feel like you have strong writing skills. People say, oh, you have to start a blog. You don't even have to start a blog. You can do a review of an article or a book. You can talk about controversies in the field and just list out who thinks what as sort of a review of what some of the big issues are in the field, or develop new developments in the field or future predictions. You could do a literature review of that. So it doesn't always have to be that you have to create some brand new content. And sometimes you can do it in list form, top 10 topics that are going to be critical to the future of X industry. You're really just writing a list, and you can publish that on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has a way that you can just do a search on it, go into LinkedIn and ask how to publish articles. Very straightforward. And that's a way you can get some of your thinking out into the public domain without having to start a blog, and also in a network and on a platform where there's a lot of activity and other people in your field. And the other piece of that is you can comment on experts' posts when they're posting things on LinkedIn. They will notice over time. In fact, one of our recent podcasts is an engineer who's getting back into the workforce after a career break, also a military spouse, who wrote about how she kept commenting on a particular expert's posts, and that eventually connected with the person, and that person became sort of an unofficial mentor to her. So these relationships can develop on LinkedIn, but you have to be willing to engage. And the more you're a subject matter expert, then the more confident you're going to feel about doing that engagement. So those are the first two steps that are harder. And then this third one, which is scripting out a succinct way to talk about your background and what you're interested in doing, that is easier. You can see how you have to do the first two steps in order to be able to do this third. And then it just requires repetition and practice and practicing out loud. But I promise you that the more you practice and the better you sound talking about yourself and your background, and you could have different versions, a really short one, a little longer one, and a longer one. The more you practice that and the more it becomes second nature, the more confident you're going to feel. And you'll sound better and better every time that you practice it. So those three steps not only will help you build your confidence, but they're going to help you get very far they're going to help you get very far in your relaunch. And the other thing I wanted to mention is we just had our 29th iRelaunch Return to Work conference, and we had 4 relaunchers featured there on an outstanding panel talking about their return to work success stories. And they, 2 out of the 4 panelists recommended Toastmasters, the organization where people are learning to become better public speakers, because Toastmasters, and it's virtual right now, but it was in person. It'll probably be going back to in person. So Toastmasters.org, they have chapters all over the world, very inexpensive, about $45 or $50 every 6 months. And most of the people are working who are in Toastmasters, and everyone has this common goal of becoming a better public speaker, and it's a very supportive environment. And the two relaunchers and other relaunchers who have talked to us about it said that's been really helpful in confidence building. And it also helps you develop a skill that'll be helpful to you in your interviewing, in your interactions, and once you're back on the job. And the other thing I would recommend is relaunchers say they get a lot of benefit from our podcast. So go to iRelaunch.com, 321 iRelaunch is the podcast name. You'll see it on the heading on the homepage. We have almost 200 episodes that are released, and we do have some that are from experts and some that are from relaunchers themselves. And I highly recommend that you listen to a range of podcasts from relaunchers, even if they're not relaunching in your field, because invariably, or there's something about their story that's less relevant to you, because invariably they're going to talk about certain tips, like the military spouse who was talking about how she ended up using LinkedIn to broaden her network in a meaningful way. Maybe you're not an engineer who's relaunching after a long career break, you're in another field, but that could be very relevant to you. So I wanted to encourage you to listen to those, and I think relaunchers find them valuable. Okay, it's time to move on to our panel. I'm really excited about it. If you have questions for me, please put them in the chat. I know you're going to have questions when you're hearing our panelists speak to. Put those in the chat, and then at the end, we'll try to answer as many as we can. So I first want to introduce Kuae Kelch Mattox. Her full bio is located on our website, but just a brief introduction about Kuae. She is the national president of Mocha Moms. She's an Emmy-nominated journalist with more than 20 years of experience in print, broadcast, and online media, and currently she's an editorial producer booking high-profile newsmakers for CNN's morning show New Day with Chris Cuomo and Alison Camerata. And she has an outstanding background. I call Kuae the celebrity relauncher because she was actually on the cover of the New York Times Magazine in 2013 when you actually would get the magazine. And there was a story, the cover story was called The Opt-Out Generation Wants Back In. It was by Judith Warner, and it was written 10 years after the very famous Lisa Belkin Opt-Out Revolution story. Came out in 2003. It was a follow-up in 2013. And Kuae was one of the people interviewed, and she was on the cover. So she's also a longtime member of our iRelaunch advisory board, and she holds a bachelor's degree in print journalism from Howard University and a master's in journalism from the Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism. So I'm going to hand it over to Kuae now. Kuae, please take it away. Kuae, I think you're on mute.
I was muted. I'm on now. I hope everyone can hear me. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Return to Work Employer Showcase. Carol, thank you so much for that chat. You are such a wealth of information, and I know I could listen to you for a really, really long time. You've been immensely helpful to me in my career as I relaunched my career. So thank you for that, and thank you for talking to us this evening. My name is Kuae Kelch Mattox. I am the national president of Mocha Moms Incorporated, and we are thrilled to be co-hosting this event with iRelaunch. As Carol said, this is our second event, and we are very much looking forward to digging in a little bit more and learning about some employer return to work programs, and also learning a little bit more about you. So before we get rolling with our panelists, we'd love to find out a little bit more about those of you all who are participating in this session. We want you to tell us a little bit about yourself. So we have a few questions for you. Hope you'll indulge us. 4 questions, but I'm hoping you wouldn't mind answering these questions, and that'll help us out a little bit more. You'll see the first one up on the screen about your background. And so as you see, we want to know a little bit more about What function was most of your prior experience? So hoping your function is here. You can choose more than one. And then in a few moments, we'll go to the second question. We want to make sure everyone has a chance to answer this. Whenever we're ready to move on to the next question.
So all of the questions are currently on the screen. If you would like to see them all, simply scroll down and you can see all 4 questions at one time.
Thank you. Okay. Results here. So this is a good overview of who we have. We have a nice cross section, for sure. And you can scroll down to see the results for all of the questions. I see that 52% of you would like to return to work in a full-time capacity, and 37% are open to returning to work in a full-time or part-time capacity. And as for years of experience, how many years of work experience did you have prior to your career break? It looks like the majority of you have either had 6 to 10 years of experience or 11 to 15 years of experience. And this was the big question for me. How long was your career break? How long were you out of the full-time workforce? 35% have been out of the full-time or were out of the full-time workforce for 6 to 10 years. And then the rest are fewer than that. And 7% were out of the workforce for 16 to 20 plus years. Great, so that gives us a good sense of who you are. Thank you so much for taking that moment to answer those questions. I want to introduce you to our wonderful panel. We have some very dynamic leaders here who are going to talk to us a little bit about their own story and also share with us information about their return to work program. So I'm just going to introduce the panelists to you. First, we have Sandra Fernandes. Sandra Fernandes is the Global Program Director for Glide Relaunch. In this role, Sandra oversees and determines recruiting, engagement, and retention strategy for the enterprise-wide returnship program. Previously, she was the head of early talent development for wealth and investment management. Collectively, these programs include a community of 500 plus participants. Sandra started her career with Wells Fargo in 2006. She earned her BS in industrial management from Purdue University. She sits on the Charlotte Advisory Board for the Hispanic Scholarship Fund and the Wells Fargo Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. Sandra resides in Charlotte, North Carolina, and in her spare time, she enjoys traveling. Welcome, welcome, Sandra. Meredith Idola leads Facebook's Return to Work program. She comes to Facebook with 9 years of experience as a human resources business partner before taking an over 5-year career break to start her family. After participating in Facebook's Return to Work program, she was extended an offer to join Facebook as the program manager. responsible for growing and expanding the program across business areas and regions. Welcome, Meredith. Darla Pires DeGrace's career spans over 2 decades, and she's been recognized as a subject matter expert on building diverse teams and creating more inclusive work cultures. She recently joined Morgan Stanley as Executive Director, Global Head of Diversity, Talent Acquisition. Prior to Morgan Stanley, Darla served as CEO, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist for DeGrace Group Consulting, LLC, a thriving diversity, staffing, and culture solutions firm she launched in 2017. She's a native of Cambridge, Massachusetts, and a first-generation college graduate who earned her degree in business administration from Emmanuel College and graduate degree from Simmons University School of Management. Welcome, ladies. It's a pleasure to have you here, and thank you so much for joining us tonight to share with us a little bit about yourselves and about your program. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your own stories, how you came to be who you are today. And Meredith, I'm going to start with you because I know that you spent over 5 years in a career break. So I'd love to hear your story.
Hello, all. Thank you so much for having me here to share a little bit more about Facebook's Return to Work program. And thank you, Kuae, for the fabulous introduction. Yes, I came to Facebook through a career break. So I'm definitely living proof that the program does extend full-time offers at the conclusion of the 16-week journey. I started, let's say, originally after college graduation, I kind of fell into the field of HR, and I loved it. But I worked a ton and I wanted to spend time with my kids when they were coming into this world. So I stepped away for 5.5 years and I operated in what we call an underemployed capacity as a personal trainer and yoga instructor for 5.5 years. And it was a blast. Living a life in yoga pants is really everything it's cracked up to be. It's fantastic. But after 5.5 years, I was actually in the middle of training a client. And in the middle of a push-up, he said, "Meredith, have you ever thought about going back to the professional workforce?" And I was like, whoa. I didn't even know I had that flame inside of me until he asked me that question. And at that moment, I knew I had to pursue it. I knew I had to go out there. And initially, I just started networking and people were like, "So what do you want to do?" And I'm like, "Oh, I have this choice. I get to choose what I want to do. That's fantastic." So I just started thinking about all these cool things that I wanted to do and met with people to, get feedback on my resume and practice interviewing. And I started sending out resumes thinking like, man, this is going to be great. I'm just going to get back out there and I'm going to be in it. No. I did not receive one response to so many emails. Oh my gosh, if I could show you the spreadsheet of every place I applied, it's rather depressing. And so, after 6 months, I took a break for the holidays. I was like, man, I can't handle this rejection. It's too overwhelming. It makes you feel horrible. And I just wanted to spend time with my family. So in January of 2020, I logged in and I saw Facebook had the opportunity with their Return to Work program to run its Return to Work program. And I'm like, what the what? Like, this is better than I could have ever imagined. And I ended up getting the job after interviews and fear. And oh my gosh, the amount of sweat that happened with all the prep. It was a terrifying experience. And so I got the job. I entered into the 16-week program. And at the conclusion of the program, I was offered the opportunities to support its expansion. So I will tell you, it is a dream to be in this job. It's a dream to be here today with you all to talk about how you can do the same thing that I've done and a lot of other returners in Facebook's program are doing. And I just want to say you're brave and you're resilient and keep going because there's a job that's lucky enough to have you in it soon.
Thanks so much. Oh my goodness, that's a wonderful story. I love that. I feel really good just listening to that. Sandra, tell us a little bit about your story.
Hey, sure. Hey, everyone. Excited to be here. Thank you, Mocha Moms and iRelaunch for hosting this event. It's my first time and Welds Fargo's first time being here, which is really exciting. I personally am Indian and Portuguese, and I was born and raised overseas. And I stumbled into financial services when I graduated from Purdue University, but no one in my family really had a financial services background. So for me, I've been with Wells Fargo for 15 long years, and my career path has taken me from Richmond to St. Louis to now Charlotte, which is really exciting. And I primarily grew up within HR. I recall taking a sabbatical while I was with Welds Fargo, where I did a stint with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where I took about 6 weeks off. And I went to Ethiopia to help this company called the Agricultural Transformation Agency build out their HR department. And I just recall leaving, getting on a plane, going to a place that was really unfamiliar to me, feeling so alien-like I didn't belong, and then coming back to the US, trying to reassimilate myself to lifestyle here. It just felt like I was a fish out of a water. But I say all of that to say that fast forward, I've had a series of careers here at Wells Fargo. I was in executive recruiting. I previously ran early talent. I served on the Diversity and Inclusion Council here within the firm. And I feel as if every single role that I've previously held has prepared me for this moment. So today I have the absolute pleasure of serving as Glide Relaunch's Global Program Director. And it is incredible because it has all of my favorite elements from every single previous job that I've held here at the company, all morphed into one. So like Meredith, I am just feeling as if I have fun every single day I come into work because I get to serve this community and I get to help people re-enter into the workforce. And I cannot think of a more deserving population that if we were lucky enough to experience you here at Wells Fargo, then how great would it be? So just excited to be here. And again, Wells Fargo has been kind to me to the last 15 years. So again, if you join this firm, you'll get to experience that culture, and just excited to be here.
Sandra, thank you so much for that. I cannot tell you, and I probably speak on behalf of a lot of people in this session, I can't tell you how wonderful it feels to hear you say that this population is valued.
Yes.
It's one of the most important things I think we all want to hear, that we're valued for our expertise, for our experience, and for who we are. So thank you so much.
That's right.
It means
Sure.
the world. Darla, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Carol, thank you so much for inviting me, and Kuae, thank you for the introduction. I've spent the last 20 years in diversity, equity, and inclusion in corporate America. And about 5 years ago, I decided to launch my own business. And in some respects, joining Morgan Stanley the end of last year was sort of like my return to work story, if you will, because I left my consulting practice to join a firm and hadn't been exposed to financial services or that industry prior. So it's been a learning curve, but certainly one that I've embraced. And I can tell you that for my role specifically at the firm, there was some intentionality about bringing someone external to financial services. And so while DEI is not new for me, financial services was, and that was something that Morgan Stanley was pretty keen on, in really valuing external experiences, but also, inheriting this return to work program has been a phenomenal experience for me, because the firm really does believe in the value in the experiences that you have. And so I'm excited to run this program globally for the firm.
Great, thanks so much, Darla. Let's dig in a little bit and find out more about your return to work programs. Meredith, tell us a little bit about the return to work program at Facebook. Share with us about the interviewing process, the selection process, the timelines, anything that you can share that will be helpful for us.
Absolutely. So Facebook is an intent to hire program. So each and every person in our cohort has a full-time headcount awaiting them if they demonstrate their ability to succeed and make an impact. And that's one of the cornerstone elements of the program. We want you to stay at Facebook after the program. It's a 16-week journey where we offer a supportive environment, which includes an empathetic hiring manager, a mentor who guides you on your day-to-day tasks, a buddy who's a cultural guide located outside of your reporting structure, and they're kind of your safe space. If you're having a bad day, if you're having a tough time, they're a person that you can go to, and they don't provide any performance feedback during the program. We also have people like me who meet with you every single week to make sure you're feeling on track. You also connect with the cohort every single week, and knowing that y'all all have a full-time headcount available. There's no competition. It's only uplift and support. And then we also have professional coaching offered to each of our returners. And professional coaching is rather broad. You can talk about your career. You can talk about how you show up in a meeting. You can talk about how you communicate in meetings. We also have some very interesting coaching opportunities. We have nutrition coaching. We have sleep coaching. We have family life balance coaching. All of these coaches are available to you during the 16-week program on an unlimited basis. And the idea behind that is you're undergoing not only professional changes with your reemergence in the workforce, but also some personal changes. And we want to make sure we're supporting you throughout that program. So that's a little bit about the program once you join. Now, the interview experience, we do not use a computer to look at your resume. We have recruiters that are trained only on return to work programs. So you have a human set of eyes looking at your resume and knowing that your career break is actually of value. That is why you're in the room. This is why you're being considered, is for that career break. So we want you to make that clear. If you've been volunteering or operating in an underemployed capacity, like I did, I was a personal trainer and I worked part-time to still put food on the table for my family. We want you to clearly note that. It makes it a lot easier for recruiters to say, this person has had a career break, and that's what we want. We'll also suggest update your LinkedIn profile to show that you have a career break, and LinkedIn has enabled that functionality now on its web tool. Now, the interview process is different depending on the job profile that you're applying for, but everything kicks off with that initial recruiter phone screen. And then from there, you'll have typically one more phone screen before going into our panel of interviews. Now, our panels are not 5 people in front of you at once, which even thinking about that kind of terrifies me. It's a one-on-one interview setting where you'll go into sequential interviews on either 1 day or 2 days, and that will complete the interview process. A lot of questions I get from returners are, what is the timeline for this? Like, how long does it take? Typically, once you apply, if you are selected, you'll hear back within 2 to 3 weeks from a recruiter, sometimes sooner. And then if you look at the time you apply to the time you start the program, it takes about 2 to 3 months. So if you apply today for one of Facebook's roles, which, oh my goodness, I'm really hoping you do, you would join either our August cohort or our September cohort. And we are actively interviewing and accepting applications. So if you find something on our site that you're interested in, please submit as soon as possible. We'd love to meet with you.
Couple things stood out for me from what you just said. Empathetic hiring manager. Can we all have an empathetic hiring manager? Can we all have a sleep coach, please? I really love what you said. It does show that you all value various aspects of people's lives, and it's more of a holistic approach. I really love that. Sandra, tell us a little bit more about Wells Fargo.
Sure, happy to. So at Wells, in full disclosure, we are probably the newest ones in this space. We only launched last year in 2020. And I recall being in the room as we were discussing this concept. So our Diversity and Inclusion Council was trying to think of new and interesting ways to source and hire talent. And I just recall, this was obviously pre-COVID, Michael Martino walked into the room and said, you know what we ought to think about is the returnship program and mothers returning into the workforce. And then he kind of walked on out. That then turned into an early talent project where we had a class of individuals do some research. We made it a capstone project where they started to do some competitor intel and crowdsource ideas out there in terms of what exists. That in Fold had them presenting to our operating committee leaders, and it presented itself as a way that is uncharted for Wells Fargo for us to think about talent and talent development. So we settled and nested ourselves around a few elements that anchor our Glide relaunch program. We piloted it last year, and we created a program that was going after profiles that brought at least 7 years of experience to the table, who had stepped away for 2 years, and we were incredibly inclusive of all dimensions of diversity. So we wanted working moms, we wanted dads, we wanted anyone who had stepped away for a life event to hop into the Wells Fargo space or at least be considered for it. We had some tremendous success with year one results. And for 2020, we brought on 34 interns that were a part of our inaugural program. The class was brilliant. They were diverse by empathy, to use Meredith's word. They were also diverse by their thought leadership. 85% of them were diverse by gender, 56% by race and ethnicity, and 6% veteran status. They were an incredibly educated group. The first class spoke 15 different languages as a cohort, and they just leaned into each other in ways that I hadn't seen any other talent development program do. So for us, it wasn't a matter of, the class sold itself and made for a wonderful business case in terms of why Wells Fargo needs to do more of this. And it was only because of the successes we had in year one. Another baseline for our programs is that all of the participants convert into roles that are 100,000 and above. And that is something that we work really hard on in terms of engaging the right leaders to participate. So from a timeline perspective, please know that for year two, which is 2021, and that's where we're in today, we're growing the program by 3 times, and that's only because of how amazing year one's program was. We'll be bringing in 100 participants to join our landscape this year, and I'm pretty excited because to date, I have all 15 lines of businesses within Wells Fargo who's confirmed, ready to go, and excited to participate in Glide relaunch. Our posting is actually active now. So if you're interested in learning more about the program, certainly know that we'll have that up until Monday, and we'll have notes going out after this call in terms of how to apply. But if you were to do a quick search on Wells Fargo Glide relaunch, we are accepting applications right now. Our amazing recruitment team then will review each resume. We don't use artificial intelligence to review the resumes that come through. And we have a dedicated team that meets on a weekly basis to discuss the integrity of the program. So we try to make sure that we're all staying on task from a recruitment perspective, from an L&D perspective, from just coaches and vendors being used to engage and help us get to our big goals for the year ahead. But we are feeling really excited because I'm confident that we will launch this program and deliver excellence this year with the September 13th launch. We'll run it for 8 weeks. I know that last year we put our participants through 18 facilitator-led sessions, and they got to hear from our CEO himself during that time. So it was really exciting to dial into that, have them have that one-on-one engagement with the right leaders as they participated in Glide relaunch. So that's been our journey. I know that it's really young, but we're excited to be here amongst all of you, and we're also excited to grow in this space.
Thanks so much, Sandra. Darla, tell us a little bit more about Morgan Stanley's program.
Yeah, so, we're in our 8th cohort. We just wrapped up the cohort in North America out of New York. And, it is a 12-week program, and it's a, competitive pay. And, we look at candidates that have anywhere from, 2 years out of the workforce all the way up to 20 years, right? And so we're really thrilled about that. And it's representation from all areas of the firm, right? So this past cohort, represented in wealth management, investment management, technology and operations. And so each fall, we invite hiring managers, or hiring managers come to us and let us know that they're interested in hiring a return to work participant, or at least engaging in the returnship. And so you do have those empathetic hiring managers, but to Meredith's point, it's sort of those wraparound services that provide that level of comfort for candidates throughout the program. And so that wraparound service consists of a mentor, a peer advisor, a tech advisor, but also ongoing tech support throughout the duration of the 12 weeks. In addition to, goal expectations, setting goals, and working with your hiring manager on performance management. So you have an idea of how you're performing throughout the program, areas to improve, and really highlighting you. And it really is that level of comfort and support. And the goal is to hire, right? We want to convert 100% of our participants. So that is the premise of the program. And we're excited to expand it beyond the areas that I just mentioned. So
Great.
Exciting.
Great, thank you. One of the big questions many people have when they apply to a program is, what's the culture? What's your company like? What kinds of people work there? Will I fit in? I'm just going to throw this out to all of you all. Can you talk to me a little bit about the culture of your company? What's the culture like?
Yeah, I mean, I can kick it off. I'm new to the firm, but something that I hear consistently from my colleagues that have essentially grew up with the firm is that it's their colleagues and the people that they work with, that contribute to their long tenure. In my short tenure with the firm, it really is the core values and seeing those lived out throughout the firm. So, post the unfortunate murder of George Floyd, the firm took a stand and actually added diversity and inclusion to their core values. And so return to work aligns nicely with that initiative. And so I think the culture of living out your core values is certainly one that, encouraged me to join the firm.
I'll go next. For Wells Fargo, I would say that it's a very tenured company. I know that most of the leaders that you would interact with here have been here for decades, if not more. I can tell you that over the course of the 15 years, I don't just have coworkers, I have friends that I come to work with on a daily basis. So I can't tell you how many weddings I've been to, baby showers, actual text messages and group chats that I'm a part of. And I know that they're my coworkers, but they really are my work family more than anything. For Wells Fargo, I know that we recently released our values that we want every single employee to work towards. So embracing candor is one, doing what's right is another, being great at execution is the third, learn and grow is the fourth, and being a champion of diversity, equity, and inclusion is the fifth. And it's interesting because since we released our expectations at work, it evolved from cultural values to actual expectations. I've heard team members say, let me go ahead and embrace candor and have a moment with you. And they start getting really transparent with giving feedback, or at least leaning into these pillars that govern our culture. So it's been transformative. I've also heard that it's one of the nicest companies to work for. I don't know, try it out and then come tell me what you think after you join our firm. But I've certainly enjoyed working here for 15 plus years, and it's been a great place to call my work home.
And I can round us out with Facebook's culture. I got to tell you, it's a rather unique environment that was it was never something that I have been exposed to in the past. So I think I'd like to start with Facebook's mission, which is to give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together. And that's not only an external mission, that's internal. You're expected to build your community inside of Facebook with your coworkers. And that starts with being open. That's one of our 5 publicly announced values. Like, I have never been in a company where you're not expected to separate your work life and your personal life. So if you're impacted by what's going on outside of your actual job, they want you to talk about it and share about it. And that was refreshing, but something new that I hadn't experienced before. I will also share that Facebook has a value called bring your authentic self. And the way that we do that is by building community internally, because it's hard to be your authentic self if you feel like you're the only. If you feel like you're the outlier and you're the one person that is like you, it's hard to be really out there with who you are. And so one of the ways we facilitate that internal community is something called Fbrgs, Facebook Resource Groups. And I don't know if y'all remember, we have an app for that. That's like Fbrgs. We have an Fbrg for that. So if you're interested in eating, there's a group. If you're interested in cooking, there's a group. We also have groups that are supportive of other communities. And we have 9 official Fbrgs that are Facebook-wide sponsored, and one of our largest Fbrg is called our Black Ad group. It is a very, very interactive group where people who either identify as Black or identify as an ally come together for programming and community. But it doesn't stop there. Most other organizations within Facebook have other Black at support groups where people come together to form a sense of community internally. The final touch I'll make here is Facebook is massively growing and expanding, and we have a huge onboarding culture. So if you have a question and you're worried that it's a dumb question, all you have to do is say, hey, I'm a new hire, I have a question. And everyone's like, no worries, what's up? Because we onboard so many people so often, people are so supportive. And it was actually rather shocking to me. I met the first few people when I came in last year, and I was like, wow, these people are nice. And then I met another group of people, and I'm like, these people are nice. And then another group, and I'm like, oh my gosh, is everyone nice here? And they are. It's so amazing. And so it makes that anxiety that you feel, not only as a new hire, but as a returner, it makes it decrease, because you know people aren't judging you for your questions, and they really actually want to help. They actually finish their meetings with, please reach out if there's anything else I can do to help you. And it's like, wow, that feels good. So those are a couple tidbits about Facebook culture that I enjoy.
That's great. Talk to me a little bit about independent work. Many of our mothers have home-based businesses. They work on a project-based, projects independently. There are a lot of different configurations of mothers in our organization and just outside. Is that a disqualification for your program, or is that okay?
It's okay for Morgan Stanley. I mean, we encourage you to apply if you've done any sort of independent work or projects during your time off.
And I can go next on that one. I shared my story. I was operating in what we call an underemployed capacity during my career break, and we welcome that. What we ask you to do, though, is make it very, very clear that you're operating in either a part-time capacity, an unpaid capacity, or in a capacity that is outside of your strong skill set. So some people, for example, take part-time tutoring jobs. Like I trained because I still needed to feed my family. And we get that. And you shouldn't be penalized for putting food on the table for your family. So if you're doing that, that's fantastic. Celebrate it, put it on your resume, but just clearly label it as, part-time or independent work or consulting.
Yeah, the same for Wells Fargo. I know that part of program construct is that we want individuals to bring at least 7 years of experience to the table, but who have stepped away from their previous roles for at least 2 years. So I agree with the points on being clear with your resume on whether it was on a voluntary basis, because that's what will get you within the door in terms of your application process. So we are intentionally looking for career breaks. And as someone who has a recruitment background, I know that most of our roles traditionally go after recent and relevant experience, but Glide is saying, no, what actually qualifies you is having a 2-year break. So we are seeking that out for Glide relaunch, and that's part of program construct.
Talk a little bit about the recruitment process. What are you looking for? Where are you recruiting? Talk a little bit about your own process to recruit, and who do you hope to find? What kinds of employees do you hope to find?
Sure, I'll go first. This is incredibly near and dear to my heart, only because I get to work with really sophisticated and talented team members that are in our targeted sourcing group and division under HR. So for Wells Fargo, I know that our journey is laid out in terms of what we're looking to accomplish for the year from a goals perspective. But what that means is that things start before the requisition goes live, right? And the requisition is live today and right now. But leading up to that point, we were really intentional in terms of reaching out to specific associations and organizations to direct talent our way. I know that we had wonderful partnerships with iRelaunch. Excited to be here with Mocha Moms, and we have other vendors that we've used to ensure that we have the right talent directed our way. We also have amazing employee resource network groups here within the company, and we've cascaded the program over to them to share the message. So they've been incredible in terms of directing talent and referrals our way. I know that we've also had a pretty robust social media platform as well, using LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Twitter, just to push out messaging and marketing on the Wells Fargo front. And we also have a pretty strong multimedia team under our communications group that produced some articles on behalf of our inaugural year. So we recently had an article go out, and that was in collaboration with CNN. We had another one that was done with a local affiliate here in Charlotte. So we had WCNC produce and interview a couple of our gliders that graduated from the inaugural year. And we also produced an article on Welds Fargo's sustainability report, where Glide got a shout out for our work that was done last year. So leading up until this point, we had a pretty strong media engagement strategy. And then from there on out, I know that the posting is up right now, so applicants can go in and turn in their resume. We have a happy team of volunteer recruiters that are working through that and sifting through each and every single resume that comes in. And we have huddle calls with that team just to review and talk through any touch points that might need attention. LinkedIn has been really helpful. So if you connect with me on LinkedIn, you'll see that the posting information is right there. And we use that primarily to push out updates and to celebrate Glide relaunch or other programs that we have within the company. But from there on out, I know that we'll fast forward selected candidates after completing resume screens and phone interviews with specific candidates to interview days. So what's great, and I'm excited to share with you all, that this afternoon we had an in-depth training session with our incoming host managers. We prepped them on what the profile means and how you go about engaging and hosting a profile that identifies with Glide relaunch in the returnship community. And they are fully informed on the timeline that lies out ahead of them. So I'm thankful for the partnerships with you all, because I think you're helping us get stronger. From there on out, I know that we'll be working towards hosting our interview days in July to, again, have all of our offers acceptances go out in August. We're pretty excited and feeling confident about that September 13th launch date in terms of having individuals start with us. So I can't wait for this process to take life. But we're in the thick of it as far as recruiting goes, and it's top of mind for me, if you can't tell.
So for Morgan Stanley, our interview process varies by division. So applications will open up in the fall, and the program will actually run the 12 weeks starting in March. It'll run from March to June the following year. And so in terms of the recruiting for the program, we'll spend over the summer months, leveraging LinkedIn, our diversity sourcing team, obviously our work in connection with iRelaunch. We'll host a number of events, attraction events, to promote the opportunity, but also, feature and leverage our current cohort and alumni to serve as ambassadors, which they're happy to do. And so this past cohort, all 100 plus of them globally were on Broadway, and so their photos were lit up on Broadway, which was really cool to see that rotation of all of our relaunchers. So, but as I mentioned, each business unit varies. Typically, the recruiter will evaluate the resumes and pass those along to hiring managers, which are trained to be able to assess transferable skills and are very committed to evaluating candidates with that lens and valuing their experience as well as their career break. And then decisions are typically shared out by November, December, so that participants have an opportunity to respond and gear up to start in the following year.
Meredith, you answered, right? Did you answer?
I think I included a bit of interview info in my first one. I think the only additional stuff I want to add here is we want you. Like, Facebook has grown its program since 2018 to host 9 cohorts, and we have 3 more cohorts this year. And it's because of the immense value that you bring. So if you're nervous or hesitant in reaching out, please try and still either connect with me on LinkedIn or apply for the role, because we see the value in you. The other couple kind of resume tidbits that I'd like to share is, first off, make the career break clear. If it's volunteer experience, make sure that you list that clearly. Take a look at the job description and see what is listed in that JD and make sure that's matched very clearly on your resume. You don't want to miss something just because maybe there's a couple months off and people are adding things up and it doesn't quite line up. Make sure your resume matches the goal of what the job description is listing. Yeah, I think those are my couple big tips there.
I'm being mindful of the time. I see what time it is. We don't have much time, but I do want to ask, are these opportunities for returnships, are they virtual? Are they remote? We're in the age of COVID now. So everyone wants to know, do I have to go into an office? Can I work from home? Can I work from home part-time? What works for these programs?
I can start there. We've hosted, let's see, 5 programs fully remote since COVID started, and we're still fully operating in the remote capacity. Some roles, when you transition to full-time, are available in a remote capacity for the ongoing basis. The program, however, is an on-site experience for the 16-week journey. So if you are accepted into the program, maybe next year when we finally return to the office, you would be temporarily relocated by Facebook. We do pay for that. And then if you graduate into a full-time role, there's opportunity for it to be remote. Facebook has released its remote work policy, and it is very, very flexible. So that's nice. If you are a person who wants to go in the office, but not that much, there's an option for that too. We have announced the 50% remote work policy as well. So there's a lot of flexibility for remote work on an ongoing basis.
And our last 2 cohorts were remote due to COVID. And, I joined the firm remotely, and I just started to sort of ease my way back into the office. And the expectation is that you will come back to the office in New York, but it is flexible, right? And so the expectation is not that you'd be there 5 days a week. And so, 1 day a week for now, easing through the summer, and the expectation is, possibly 3 days a week in the office.
For Welds Fargo, we've announced that September is our target date to go back to work, but it is the world of COVID. So for us, what's open today is specific bank branches. We also have our advisors that are operating in a location that's at a 40% capacity. And we have the executive floors that are open in Hudson Yards, and that's capped at 50% capacity, as well as our executive floors in Hudson Yards, One Wells Fargo, that's open to our operating committee leaders and invited guests. I think the goalpost just keeps moving, or at least it feels like it has for the year that we've lived in now. So we're closely monitoring it. The health and safety of our team members is number one. I know that we've received email communications coming out from Scott Powell, who's our Chief Operating Officer, and health and safety of employees is first and foremost. So we'll closely monitor it. I think it's important to set the expectation that we could be virtual, or if our leaders have a strong preference for you to be in a specific city, then they will go ahead and communicate that to you over the duration of the internship. So ask, I think that's a healthy question to really ask. We're just setting the expectations for both, knowing that we'll just see where we end up this time, September.
Sandra, I think we're in the same building. I'm at 30 Hudson Yards. Are you at 30
Oh,
Hudson
there you go. I am not, but our leadership offices. So I'll use you as my special guest when I come there.
When you come to visit, we'll grab coffee. That sounds great. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to get through a few very quick questions, and then we're going to go to Q&A because I know there's quite a bit of chatter in the chat and a few questions. Tell me, each of you, tell me about the locations for each of your positions. Are they around the country or in one central location?
I know that because it was virtual, but typically it was New York. However, as we continue to expand the program and other locations want to join, I think it could be open. So it'll be very clearly defined on our website, which location.
The same. So for Wells Fargo, we are domestically open. I know that we have specific cities that we are targeting that are preferred locations based on Wells Fargo's targets. So Charlotte, North Carolina, Dallas, Texas, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Phoenix, Arizona, and St. Louis are all a part of our preferred footprint. Last year, we again were virtual in nature, so it was a bit different, but this year we're working towards our Area 2's location, that's internal language, along with expanding internationally to include participants that will be based in India, the Philippines, Dublin, London, and Canada, which could be really exciting. But for those that are within the US, I know that if you're applying to the program, and if you are overseas today, certainly know that you have to be here within the US to participate in the program holistically, but also know that we're growing our chapters. So we're hopeful to align with Wells Fargo footprint internationally and domestically.
And Facebook is all over the US. It really depends on the role that you're applying for. So take a look at that. And we also expanded to Europe this year and we'll continue to expand there next year. So if you don't see a location you're looking for right now, we add roles regularly and we'll add some more toward the end of the year. So keep your eye out.
That's great. And can you reiterate how many years applicants have to be out of the workforce to qualify for your programs? I think you touched on it, but just let us know one more time.
For Wells Fargo, we're hoping to invite individuals who have at least 7 years of experience to apply and who have stepped away for at least 2 years. And that's 2 years from the time of your application date, so now in June.
And we're similar with Morgan Stanley as well.
Facebook?
We are 2 years, a little different from Sandra. It's last date worked and the start date of the cohort. So not from application date, it's when you actually start the program.
Got it. And still on Facebook, are there, a lot of the positions seem to be technical positions. Are there non-technical positions for people who are not necessarily technically oriented? And that goes for all of you all, but let's start with Facebook.
So I know nothing about tech and I joined through the program. So yes, there are, but they are not as often as the non-tech roles. I will tell you that there is big interest in expanding into non-tech roles in the future. So if you're not a tech person, please don't feel left out. Please keep checking our website. We'll open more opportunities in the new year and hopefully we can include you in those.
For Wells Fargo, we again have 15 different lines of businesses participating, and we asked our leaders to think about the profile when they were submitting roles to participate in Glide Relaunch. So while I have 15 different businesses and it ranges from consumer and small business banking, public affairs, audit, the chief operating office, commercial banking, risk, consumer lending, finance, HR, legal, wealth and investment management, corporate and investment banking, diverse segments representation, technology and strategy, digital and innovation, know that the roles that will be partaking are aligned with the business, right? So read through the job description. I know that today, intentionally, we wanted to outline all the 15 LOBs along with all the positions that they are looking to recruit for, because it is an internship, again, with the intent to convert into a full-time role. So a seat is already allocated for you as you come through the program. So again, we're hoping that the roles that participate in the program are generic in nature. But again, if it is nuanced to a particular line of business, you'll see that outlined in the job description.
Yeah, and we're looking to expand too beyond sort of the technical aspects of the firm and the different business units. So I would say, you know, look at the website and you'll be able to see which business areas are open. But that is the goal, to expand to HR, to communications, to marketing, beyond sort of the financial roles.
Wonderful. I definitely like to see that. That would be great. Okay, we are going to move to Q&A, and there's quite a few questions in the chat. So I'm going to we're not going to be able to get to all of them. I know we will not, given the time, but I'm going to ask a few. And Darla, this first question is for you. I think we kind of answered this, but I'll just read it. Does Morgan Stanley require a career break, and for how long? Were there any difficult conversations during your interviews with Morgan Stanley in terms of your lack of financial experience?
So it's 2 years, and no, in fact, the committee, interviewing for this position, they were very intentional to make sure that the person coming into my role as a global head of diversity talent acquisition didn't come from the financial services sector. They wanted that facet of diversity represented in this role because they do embrace, diverse perspectives and experiences. So that was very intentional on their part that I did not come from financial services.
And I think this question is for you as well. I'm a pharmacist with a degree in health economics looking for a company that can use my skills and help develop new ones. I divested out of ownership of a pharmacy 3 years ago and just wanted to try another career. What are my options? It's probably for all of you all. What are my options for someone with a degree in health economics? Any thoughts?
I think it comes down to the application of your degree. So I would let the process work itself out as you apply for different postings. I would also encourage you to use LinkedIn to your advantage. So if I were looking for a job today, and if I know that Wells Fargo calls it the Glide Relaunch program, I would do a search for everyone that went through the program, perhaps connect with those that graduated from it, and pick their brain and connect with them. But I would apply to roles, and I would allow the process to work itself out.
Yeah, and I would also make sure that you're identifying the transferable skills, right? We have a medical chief, right? And so you would think, oh, investment, banking, why would you have a doctor, right? So I think, identifying what those transferable skills are will be really helpful on your resume.
I'll also touch that Facebook does have some people going through career transitions involved in its program, as long as the transferable skills, like my peers just mentioned, are clearly made available on the resume. I underwent a career transition. I'm no longer in HR. I'm in actually the technology organization doing a lot of technology program management work, which is nowhere near my skill set. So as long as you are able to draw the parallels from the job description and your skill sets, you can be successful in the transition.
Great, Meredith, is the Facebook Return to Work program cohort year-round, or is it only until August and September?
That's a good question. So we do offer what we call rolling cohort start dates. And this year we had 9, I believe, if we count our European program. So our last cohort for this year will start in September, because we find that returners starting after September being supported through the holidays is a bit tough. A lot of people take vacation and holidays, and we want to make sure all of our support people are there for you. That being said, take a look at the Facebook website toward the end of the year. We'll start updating our roles toward the end of this year and the beginning of next. And you can definitely apply for 2022's program at that time.
Okay, this is for all of you. How many applications do your programs receive versus open positions?
Still early for Wells Fargo. Again, having just 1 year under our belt, I know that last year we had 40 positions that were available and over 800 applicants that came through our requisition.
I'm not sure how to answer that. We get a ton of applications, but I will say the most key and crucial element, the career break, is most often the thing that disqualifies people. So we get a ton of we call it top of funnel, a ton of applicants, but what we're looking for is you. That 2-year career break is what we are intentionally looking for. So once we weed out those that don't qualify for the program, there's not a ton. So please, 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 definitely, we're looking for those with a career break. Make that clear, and we'd love to talk to you.
Yeah. And I mean, we get thousands of applications, right? But the idea is to hire as many, even before we know what the headcount is, right? We want to engage people and allow them to enjoy the sort of that 12-week program. And then if for whatever reason there isn't a headcount at the end of that, we are going to find something for you at the firm, right? So you may have interned for 12 weeks and maybe it's not something that you actually like, right? Maybe it's not the work that you envisioned, right? And so then our recruiters work with you in identifying other roles across the firm, right? So, we want to attract as many talent as possible, and then help you to secure something at the end of it.
Great, Meredith, this question is for you. Thank you for the overview of the program. This was really helpful. I've applied to the TPM position. Should I reapply since I haven't heard anything back or even an acknowledgement that my application was submitted? My concern is not knowing if my application is in the pool to be considered. Thank you.
That's a tough one, sending the resume out and you feeling like it goes into this abyss and not hearing a response. I definitely can empathize and connect with that story because that's very much like mine. What I would strongly recommend that you do is apply to all of the TPM roles that are available and listed on our site. There's definitely more than one. If you've submitted with your into the careers site, you don't need to go into the same location again and resubmit to that same job profile. But I encourage you to apply for some of the other open TPM roles that are out there, because each role is a little bit different and on a different team.
Great, thank you. Let's see. I want to make sure I'm getting to as much as possible. Outside of the returnship programs, does Facebook, Wells Fargo, Morgan Stanley consider applicants with a prior work break with an open mind for other positions? So outside of your returnship program, is there an open mind for folks who've had a career break?
It is a hot topic for Wells Fargo. I know that we are discussing building out a direct hire piece. With that, of course, you lose the cohort component, but we're going through a job re-architecture currently within Wells Fargo, and we're looking into ways how we could be inclusive of welcoming individuals that have a career break. So for us, it's new, having a year only under our belt, but we're exploring ways and we're learning from experienced companies like Morgan and Facebook to see what else we could do to improve our programming. So new space for us and more to come.
I will encourage everyone with a career break to apply to any job at Facebook that they see as a good fit. We are finally getting the word across our massive organization that returners are out there and they are amazing. And so let's say you go into that full-time pathway and it doesn't lead you to a full-time role at the end. We are starting to build up the infrastructure. We're not fully there yet, but it's something that's in progress where we take those with a career break that maybe didn't pass that full-time bar and see if there's an opportunity within return to work for them to be considered. So pursue the full-time full-time opportunities. If they do not work, that's not the end of the road. It could be just the beginning.
Yeah, and absolutely explore the full-time roles. We've had hiring managers just hire talent before they could even start the returnship. And so I think, and coming to us, do you have any talent? We have these open recs. So actually using it as a talent pool for current roles. So I would strongly encourage you to apply for both.
Great. Okay, hold on. Let me see if I'm missing anything. How do you identify transferable skills? So we've talked about that a lot, but how are you able to identify them?
So what that looks like is you take a look at the job description that's listed, and maybe you did something very similar and maybe it's worded differently or in a different profession, but it still can relate to what they're looking for in the job description. So for example, myself, I was an HR BP. I've never been a program manager in the business of technology, but there's a lot of program management that goes on in HR. And I could draw the parallels from the job description that was listed for my role with the projects that I worked on in HR. Even though there's some differences, I was able to show that there was a connection there. So that's my recommendation on that.
I think so. I would also take advantage of the objective field in your resume, and I would list out there pieces that you think are transferable. So if it is relationship building, communication, organizing, I would use the translation piece, but also I would encourage you to use your objective because that is a potent area to list out all of your subject matter expertise at the very top. From there on out, I think your resume would tell the story in terms of what your brand is and what your background is. But I agree with listing out clearly what your technical and transferable skills are.
What are the challenges you all face in meeting your goals?
I wish we had more jobs. I think the 100's not enough, and I can't wait for this time next year where the company reinvests in it and grows the program. So it's a new space for us. I couldn't imagine Wells Fargo being where we are today. But I love that we have 1 year under our belt because our alumni was just such a rich resource in terms of giving us constructive feedback. So they were the value proposition for Wells Fargo. And based on their feedback for us today, I do want to build out a team where we can hone in and really design a curriculum that cares for the manager, that cares for the participants, that cares for the alumni base, because we're trying to build something that's sustainable for years to come. So not so much a roadblock of sorts. It's just that there's a lot of excitement around Glide relaunch and folks wanting to do more in this space.
And I'm wondering if you all can talk a little bit about the challenges you face with regard to diversity and inclusion as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key areas, right? And one of the commitments for this program, right? We've attracted many women, which is certainly an area that we, want to grow with the firm. But then when you think about the intersectionality, right? BIPOC women, I think it's really important to focus, and that's why I'm so excited that Mocha Moms is very involved with iRelaunch, and I'm a Mocha mom, and so the ability to engage this group of women is amazing. But it's definitely something that we are prioritizing for this coming cohort. But certainly it's a challenge. I mean, we just even due to the COVID and the pandemic, you have 2 million women that might not be at that 2-year mark in terms of out of the workplace. And so how do we even engage those women? And so I'll be looking to prioritize them as well.
And I'll kind of piggyback on that, Darla. The reason we're here is because we want to target some intersectionality with our program. And so we are reaching out to our returner graduates who identify as Black or Latinx to say, are there alternative resources that we can leverage to target communities of women of color? And our program is actually not restricted to women, it's women and men, just people of color in general. Mocha Moms was shared with me as an opportunity from Carol, and I'm infinitely grateful for the partnership that we began back in January, because this is something that is very important to me. We also started working with NSBE, the National Society of Black Engineers, and SHEP, the Society of Hispanic Engineering Professionals. And we continue to work in that direction to increase the diversity of our return to work program.
That's great. I'm just going to ask one more question because I know we're over time right now. For Facebook and Wells Fargo technical roles, will there be whiteboard coding interviews? How different is the interview process than regular software engineer roles?
So some tips on the technical interview at Facebook. We do not require you to code in a specific language. We ask you what language you're comfortable with coding, and then you go there. We want you to be able to showcase your skill sets. And the best way you can do that is by picking a language or coding language that you're comfortable with and being a subject matter expert in that. Practice that up and down. There's a lot of free online tooling that allows you to practice the coding interviews. You can just Google them. CoderPad is one that we've used in the past, but take a look at those and practice, practice, practice. And then get strong in 1 or 2 languages and use those languages during your coding interview.
For Wells Fargo, I would say that know that because we have multiple lines of businesses participating, a tip that I would share with this group is that we will be using the STAR methodology to complete interviews. So if you're not familiar with what that is, do a quick Google search, and it really hones in on situation, task, action, and result. And know that we will be evaluating competencies using that methodology. So each job does vary in terms of what the lines of businesses are looking for, but your previous skills, I think, will really help you rise up to the top in that interview process. And again, the STAR methodology is what we'll be using at Wells.
Thank you, ladies. We are over time, and I know we could continue talking for the rest of the evening, but we're going to have to wrap this up. For those of you all who want to know more about each program, I think there's information in the chat about each return to work program. So please look for that information in the chat. Just to note that the full bios of all of our panelists is on the registration page for this event. So please learn as much as you can about these wonderful, wonderful ladies who are sharing with us information about their return to work programs. I encourage everyone to check out iRelaunch. You're all familiar with iRelaunch, but wonderful programs going on all throughout the year. And for those of you all who are not Mocha Moms, please join us. We are open to anyone who wants to join. We are all across the country. We have many chapters. It's a wonderful organization of sisterhood, support, and service. We welcome you. So with that, I'd like to thank all of you all for joining us tonight. Thank you for sharing information about your programs. As I said, it means the world for us to hear that we're valued, and for our moms and those who are participating in this session to hear that and to know that their career break does matter. So thank you so much. And with that, we're going to end it. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.